and like June Stott, she has been mutilated. McCaffrey radios a trooper on the ground to stop the mysterious car and to question the driver.
The intent was to identify him, find out why he was there. There were a lot of coincidences.
The driver is a local food factory worker and Vietnam veteran called Arthur Shawcross. He agrees to talk to the police.
We wanted time to know more about him, who we were dealing with. He was cooperative. He was never in custody. He was free to go.
And the more the police find out about the dark past of Arthur Shawcross, the more suspicious they become.
We found out that he'd been arrested twice before for murder. Young kids up in Watertown, New York. Young kids.
In May 1972, Arthur Shawcross lured 10-year-old Jack Blake into some woods and murdered him. 4 months later, on the 4th of September, 8-year-old Karen Ann Hill was visiting Watertown with her parents when Shawcross raped and killed her and dumped the body. Shawcross was sentenced to 25 years in jail, but paroled after 15 on the advice of prison psychiatrists. In March 1987, the parole board settled him and his girlfriend, Rose Wally, in Rochester. But the police had not come across his name in their sweep of paroled murderers living in the city. The parole board had originally tried to settle Shawcross and Rose Wally in the towns of Binghamton and then Delhi in New York State. But local residents had physically chased them out of each town when they learned of his past. In desperation, the board sent them to Rochester.
I think the thing about the parole board is they wanted to ditch him somewhere to get him out of their way. And I think they just said, well, let's take this guy and put him somewhere. And they brought him up here, and they hit him.
And this time, they decided to keep his arrival secret. As the child killer begins a new life in Rochester, even the police don't know he's in the town.
How did I feel about it? That's what they did. I can't get angry. It's just, that's what happened. Things happen, and you just got to work around it.
FBI profiler Greg McCrary is convinced Shawcross fits his profile of the killer.
This guy now is on parole for a double homicide. My experience has been is that when you put these guys in prison, it's just like putting them on hold for a period of time. And then when they get out, they pick up exactly where they left off. Boy, this is great news. I mean, this is exactly who we think would be responsible for this.
Some experts consider killing children and killing adults to be two very different crimes, unlikely to be committed by the same offender. But in the case of Arthur Shawcross, McCrary sees a possible connection.
I think the commonality is simply the vulnerability of the victims, that these are easy victims to get. The kids followed them, they wanted to go fishing with them, and prostitutes are easy victims, if you will. They'll get in the car with anybody.
The violent past of Arthur Shawcross suggests this man could be the killer, but the police need concrete evidence if they're to make a conviction stick.
If you were asking law enforcement for their hunches, most probably would have said, yeah, this guy's a good bet. But hunches don't equate with a legal requirement.
There's still a lot of work for the police to do. With no forensic evidence, everything depends on getting Shawcross to confess.
You need anything, Art? Cup of coffee?
No.
Leonard Borriello of Rochester Police
You go fishing,
and Dennis Blythe of New York State Police are given the task of interviewing Shawcross.
You been arrested, Art?
Yeah. Once. 2 kids died.
How did you hit him, Art? Did you use a weapon?
I hit him with this.
And what about the girl, Art?
I choked her.
You know, I knew in my own mind, I says, I was positive that he was the killer. And I said, gee, you know, a lot of people are going to be disappointed if we don't get a confession. Mainly me.
But if the police can't get a confession from Shawcross, They will have to let him go. He will be free to prowl the streets of Rochester again. January 1990. Police in Rochester, New York, are interviewing 44-year-old Arthur Shawcross. They suspect he is a serial killer who has murdered 11 women over the last 2 years.
The interview was critical. There's no smoking gun. There's nothing that linked him directly to these crimes. It was circumstantial at that point, so getting him to admit to even one of these things would be a huge, huge event.
You treat a suspect, with kid gloves. I mean, you want to be friendly with him, you want to assist him, and, show him that you're friendly. Let him see his girlfriend, let him see his wife. Does he want coffee? Does he want something to eat? I mean, basically you're his friend. Or let him believe that you're his friend.
You go fishing, Art?
Yeah, I like to fish, sure, yeah.
Where do you like to fish, Art? Up on Lake Ontario?
No, Lake Ontario's dead, everybody knows that.
The investigators decide to push Shawcross on their strongest lead, Elizabeth Gibson, who was seen getting into the car of a man called Mitch hours before her death. The police track down Barb, the prostitute who made the sighting. She immediately confirms the man in the interview room is the man she knows as Mitch.
I talked to Investigator Blythe, and I told him, I says, let's go for the Liz Gibson confession first. I says, we have all the information in the world. That's our best case. We get that, then we've got the rest of the day to get the rest.
You did Liz Gibson, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Come on, Art, don't bullshit us. We know you did.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Come on, Art, it's all over. We know. Barb saw you with Gibson.
You were seen with that woman 11 hours before she shows up dead. Is that a coincidence? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Coincidence.
Come on, Art, we know it's you. Now, we treated you well, right?
Why are you guys fucking with me?
All right, Art, calm down.
Confronting Shawcross hasn't worked. The investigators need to come up with a new tactic, and quick. Dennis Blythe remembers Shawcross had seemed concerned about Clara Neal, a woman with whom he's having an affair, and whose car he was driving when he was taken in.
That car of yours, Art? Who drives that car apart from you? Think about it. We all know the car belongs to Clara, and we'd hate to think Clara was involved in this. Tell me specifically, was Clara involved in this?
No, she isn't involved.
Which is a huge statement, meaning she's not, but perhaps I am, and then that was the tipping point.
At that point, I don't think he had any choice.
Okay. Then why don't you tell us about Liz Gibson?
We know this is hard, Art. We know.
I killed her.
After he admitted killing Liz Gibson, we knew we had our serial killer in custody.
It is the first of 10 confessions.
He went through the pictures like he was going through a deck of cards, throwing the pictures of the girls that he was responsible for killing in one pile, and the other ones that he wasn't responsible for in another pile.
Yeah, her. Yeah, her too. Yeah.
We came out of the interview room, and everybody was crying.
Yeah, her.
We were just so proud to have this guy in custody, and he wouldn't be able to hurt anybody else.
One of the murders he confesses to is Darlene Trippi.
She was killed December 15th of '89 and found in January of 1990. So in a way, I consider my family, if you can call us lucky. There were some families that went years and years without knowing what happened to their loved one. And luckily, we didn't have to suffer that long.
At his trial in November 1990, Shawcross blames his crimes on post-traumatic stress disorder, the result of horrific experiences in the Vietnam War. Michael Stone is a psychologist who interviewed Shawcross about these experiences.
His stories all involve heroic exploits, like you would see in some B movie. The one he told me, for example, there was a girl with a belt of grenades around her, and he managed to, subdue her and behead her and stick her head on a post, as if a warning to the others, don't mess with me.
But Shawcross saw no combat in Vietnam at all. He was only responsible for handing out uniforms to other soldiers. Whilst Shawcross's stories are not true, they provide insight into his state of mind.
His exploits in Vietnam focus on women. It has the quality of portraying him as a Superman.
You ain't seen roughly.
And a Superman, who is by no means above wreaking vengeance on women that, as we would say, may have, quotes, done him wrong.
Shawcross's lurid stories do not convince the jury.
I think that pointed up that his claims about these experiences in Vietnam were exaggerated and were designed to coincide and convince a jury that he was insane with respect to the Rochester homicides.
Members of the jury, how do you find the matter of the people of the state of New York versus Arthur Shawcross?
Arthur Shawcross is found guilty of 10 murders. Later, he pleads guilty to an 11th. He is sentenced to at least 250 years in jail.
As much as justice can be done, and I told any of the survivors of the victims in this case, the best we can do is see that justice, whatever that means, that justice occurs. And I think in the case of Arthur Shawcross, the verdict was a just verdict.
The new science of profiling has proved vital in building a picture of the killer.
There is satisfaction when you're right about the majority of things that you say, but I think the greatest satisfaction is to feel that you may have played a small role in getting this guy off the street.
Since Shawcross's conviction, profiling has become central to homicide investigations.
I don't want to overstate what a profile does or the impact it has, but I don't want to understate it either. It has a place, I think, in an investigation like this, but ultimately the credit belonged to the frontline investigators.
The nightmare is over with as far as we're concerned. You had a closure, which is good for these victims' families. Because you got to remember, these girls, no matter what, these girls are somebody's wives or sisters or daughters. They got family.
Arthur Shawcross is just an evil, evil person. He took something precious away from every single one of us.
This is a guy who's not crazy. He's just bad. There's no pill that can fix these guys. And the only thing we can do to protect ourselves from these guys is simply to lock them up.